Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the Bleav Network. And joining me to talk Rockets is Frank with Rockets Chop Shop, our old friend. Great to catch up with you, Frank. And you got to love how they've taken out the Knicks, Mavs, and Spurs in 3 of the last 4, not just winning, but having the lead in about 99% of those 3 games.
Yeah, it's been interesting ups and downs for this season. Really still trying to figure out what the Rockets look like. But I think that one thing we do know is that they're a gritty team, and that's a characteristic that's carried over from last year. Kind of seems like that's Udoka's a hallmark, and they're getting the wins when they need to. So it's been good to see that they've kind of found something these last few games.
Well, just in general, as we record Thursday afternoon, they're number 5 in point differential, not in the Western Conference. They're number 5 in point differential in the NBA, 3rd in the Western Conference. So it's pretty good start for a team that, you know, is a young team trying to put things together. And, you know, some teams out there that kind of wish they were where the Rockets were. But I want to ask you about the recent switch in the Udoka rotation. But before we get there, just a reminder that today's show brought to you by MyBookie. Get in on the fun during the heart of the NFL season and early NBA action. Hey, you can usually find an edge or two early in the NBA season. Take advantage of it. Make a little cash. Get a little holiday spending money. That's always handy. And we got a deal for you, too. MyBookie doubles your first deposit up to $1,000. That's a 100% deposit bonus. Look for the promo link and code in the description. Your code is HST, as in Houston Sports Talk. Again, HST, but just look for it in the description, whether you're listening to the audio version or the video version. All right, Frank, what do you make of Udoka dropping Cam Whitmore, who they just assigned to the G League, by the way, dropping him out of the rotation and adding more Reed Sheppard?
I think it's more of Amen and Tari than Reed. I'm not saying Reed doesn't cut into those minutes, but you got to remember Tari Eason was hurt a lot of last year. I think Reed Sheppard was going to play just by function of being a guard. You think about the team right now, we only have Fred as one of our true floor general point guards. In the backup, it gets a little thin with Aaron Holiday, who's not really a point guard. Even though he's small, he plays more like Jalen Green as a shooting guard. So I think Reed's position on the team is really up for him to be able to take advantage of because they actually need it. Like Amen Thompson, as great as he is, he plays so many different positions, and the offense doesn't look great when he is on ball in the half court. So I think Cam Whitmore got the squeeze because we just have a lot of great wings. Tari, Amen, Jabari, and Dylan Brooks, and these guys are all doing a great job so far in this season, shooting aside. But the problem with Cam and his play, and I've said this multiple times, when you play basketball, especially on a team and you're not the star player, your number one thing you do cannot be just scoring. As well as he scores, in order to justify him being on the court, he has to be so efficient to make up for the fact that he's not really helping you on rebounds. He's not helping you distribute the ball. He doesn't pass the ball. The defense is okay, but he makes a lot of mistakes. So the fact that his efficiency was I think he's only made 1 3-pointer on the year. It just doesn't make sense to keep playing him. And if you're not going to play him, then you don't want him to just sit on the bench and lose time. So it just makes sense that they send him down to the G League to be able to get some on-ball reps. I'm hoping that while he's there, he really does understand what the team is asking from him. When the team has Alperen Sengun, Jalen Green as 1 and 2 options on a nightly basis, then you got Fred and Dylan, who are going to be 3 or 4 on a nightly basis. And when he's on the court, even though we like his scoring, we don't need Cam to be a volume scorer. He needs to hit his shots, run in transition, play good defense. And until he gets that and understands that, finding a niche as a young player on a team with a lot of vets that are better than you is more important than just showing off your scoring. Until he understands that, it's going to be hard for him to get into a spot where he has a solidified minutes on the team, especially if he's not shooting well.
And I'll just remind the Cam Whitmore fans that be patient. Somebody's going to get banged up. Somebody's going to go down. They're going to need him at some point. But as good as Sheppard has looked in the mid-range game, Frank, the reason you drafted this guy is the long-range shooting. They got to find ways to get him open threes, and he can't turn down looks. How many off-ball screens have they run for Sheppard, Frank? More than 3?
Maybe 1. I saw one yesterday in the game versus the Spurs where they had Sengun in the post-up, and Reed came from the right side of the court ran off a screen from Jabari, almost a little split action like the Warriors do with Draymond, and they used to do with Stephen Clay. Jabari set a screen for Reed, and he came around the corner to the corner, but he stepped out of bounds when Şengün gave him a dribble handoff. So I like that. He's the first player on the Rockets I've seen them do that for in the Ime Udoka era, where it's an actual post-up that it doesn't involve everybody just standing there and staring at Şengün. They actually had intentionality to use his scoring gravity with Şengün's post-up gravity. So hopefully we get to see at least a couple of those a game from different sides of the court. His reluctance to shoot is more, to me, the issue than his actual shooting percentages. He's going to need to put up shots. At some point, he's going to start hitting those shots, and then his volume will and his efficiency will catch up. But his biggest issue so far this season, he seems like he's scared to shoot or maybe just hesitant. And if you're not out there, just like with the Cam Whitmore thing, you have to understand what your role is within the context of the team. Reed's biggest asset right now is he stretches the floor. If he doesn't know that when he's on the court, that if they kick out the ball, we don't want you to dribble and look at the defender and size him up. He has to have an unconscious trigger and just shoot it. It messes up the flow of the offense. It delays everything. It makes the offense slow down. Early on, a lot of the minutes he was on the court were really bad for the Rockets. That is starting to turn now. It seems like Ime has been kind of pushing him to let it fly, and he's been doing a better job of that. I'd like to see that going forward. He needs to be a high-volume three-point shooter if the range that everybody claims is real. So I think that's good. And I think one thing I've seen that his defense, even though he's not a super great defender, he's actually a better NBA defender than I thought he would be at this point in his career. So to me, that bodes well for him going forward as well.
Is there any way that we can put his muscles, his strength, and Cam's muscles, Cam's strength, and Cam's ego into Reed's body? I mean, if you had those two guys put together, you would have something, Frank. We're talking about Jordan here.
Yeah, that'd be a super player. Yeah, they have the exact antithetical issues with each other. You have one guy that might be just the best pure shooter on the team that doesn't want to shoot and is causing issues when he's on the court, and the other guy who is a streaky shooter that wants to shoot everything. And if they can meet in the middle somewhere, there are probably two good players right there that could really help the Rockets out. But I think they're both young. That's one thing. Cam is 20 years old. Him and Reed might be months apart in age. It's not alarming. Like, I know people are going to, Cam is to the G League. Who cares? Even if Reed goes to the G League, who cares? This is regular rookie stuff that happens to guys. I think people are so used to the tanking mode of the Rockets where you just let 19 and 20-year-olds have free reign and lose 60 games in a season and everybody's happy. If you're trying to win games, this is typical rookie development. This is what happens on every competent team in the NBA. If you're not playing well as a young player, there's no rush to get you on the court or help you shake it out when there's veterans out there trying to win games. You can go shake it out in the G League and earn it in practice. And then as your confidence grows and your game evolves a little bit, you get back on the court. And like you said, there'll be an opportunity that comes up. It's a long season, knock on wood, but guys get hurt. We saw this last year, losing multiple key players throughout the point of the season. So they just have to keep that pro mindset that they're always ready to contribute and not sulk or take it personally, because this stuff happens in the NBA every day to young players.
Yeah. And even though Cam's not a rookie, he's still somebody that's about that age anyway. Yep. As you talked about. In April, Frank, Udoka said, quote, "I kept it pretty vanilla on offense," unquote. And he went on to say he'll add some wrinkles offensively. What, if any, wrinkles have you seen?
If he kept the vanilla, I guess this is he added like 3 sprinkles to the vanilla, because I haven't really seen anything that is different from I haven't seen anything. I mean, if you think about the offensive sets we run, it's still a lot of flex pick and roll. We still do a lot of Şengün isolation post-ups. The one thing he's great at is the plays out after timeouts. But other than that, the offense is largely related on pick and roll, isolation, drive and kick, and post-ups, which if you look at his Boston days, that's pretty much what they ran too. The only difference is that the players in Boston were much, much smarter than ours. They had collectively a very high IQ team with a lot of vets that have played in big moments. And I think his offense, it makes sense if everybody understood what they were supposed to do and played it at a high level. For example, if you're running a pick and roll and with Şengün and he rolls. The guards would know exactly when to either pass the ball out based on the defense helping. That doesn't always happen with the Rockets. Even with Fred VanVleet, he makes a lot of boneheaded decisions as a point guard. Jalen still, is not making all the passes. Reed Sheppard can make all the passes, but his handles aren't. So there's always an issue with the guard big man dynamic. And then Şengün, sometimes he gets tunnel vision when he gets the ball in the mismatch. When they come and double or triple team him, he tries to fight through it. It kind of messes up. So when he posts up, guys don't cut. There's not a lot of movement off ball. It just makes everything hard. To me, what it seems like is you have a coach that has a system. You have players that technically or theoretically should be able to play in the system, but they don't actually fit that type of play. Now, what I've seen them do to mitigate that over these past few games, over the season, over pretty much his entire tenure here, is hang their hats on defense, transition, just getting stops from running transition, hitting the glass, and getting easy points. And that's what they've been doing so far this year. I think last I checked, there were 1 or 2 in offensive rebounds. That's a lot of the reasons that their offense is better, because they get a lot of second chance points. Otherwise, I think we're probably the worst three-point shooting team in the NBA. The last I checked, our true shooting was 52 or 53%. That's about equivalent to rookie Jalen Green as a team. That's not good. They have definitely a lot of room to grow on the offensive side of the ball if they want to reach the levels that they want to play at. The data right now for the efficiency and the rankings on the team, we see this every year. The first 25 games of the season, there's going to be a team that's right now that's undefeated or like only has 1 loss, and they will crash out when January starts. And the teams that everybody's saying blow it up, we saw this with James Harden a lot of the years he was here. The Rockets to start off at 500, then once those vets, okay, it's time to go, they spring off and they finish, 4 seed, 5 seed. So we've seen this before. I'm not going to put too much stock into their rankings right now, but I do like how they're playing on defense, because I think that is something that's real, that carried over from last year to this season. The offense, it's still yet to be found. I haven't seen those wrinkles, man.
Do you feel like they're going to get away with stuff in the regular season offensively, win a lot, but this offense becomes the real problem is the postseason?
You think about the playoffs, Robert, it's the same team every other night or 2 nights off. You're going to see the same coach. They're going to watch the same film. And if you give a coaching staff in the NBA multiple opportunities to try to stop you, especially if you don't have those level of players that can defeat the scheme, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really, really hard for the Rockets in the playoffs. Now, for us, we're just praying they get in the playoffs. That's a good problem for us to have. But, yeah, if this is what they're going to be, then, yeah, I can imagine if they meet the right coach in the playoffs that they're going to come up with a game plan that really forces them to play to their weaknesses and puts players in position to be unsuccessful. And I'm just wondering if Ime is creative enough to be able to counter that. He made it to the finals with a really great team. I think defensively they did a lot. But if you remember that Celtics run that they had, their offense was nasty throughout the playoffs. Like, they were winning some ugly games. And it really bit them when they faced a very efficient offense in Golden State, and they couldn't counter because they were trying to play ISO, and Golden State plays their motion. So it's going to be crazy to see. If we do make it, I'm hoping we do have players that step up to the challenge of being the type of players that you don't need a scheme to be able to generate offense out of. That's why you like having an Alperen Şengün out there, because what he demands offensively, and then you hope collectively the team can use that to then leverage and score. But it'll be a slow progress. I still have faith in it. Can the players get smart enough to make his offense make sense? And to me, that's going to be the question going forward, because I don't think he's going to change it.
Isn't it almost a bad thing when Fred VanVleet is rolling? Because the future, I think you and I agree, is the Jalen Şengün pick and roll.
No, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that, if we're trying to win games, it's not a bad thing. If big picture wise, I think that as the season progresses, I think Jalen needs to get more time to be on ball and work out that chemistry with him and Alp, work out his decision-making early on in the season while we're still trying to win games. And if Fred is going to be that player that's next to him, and maybe that is what the Rockets are always going to have, a guard next to Jalen that's going to be on ball for him. Jalen just needs to be learned to be more diverse in how he can score. He's shown flashes of it, being able to score off ball on the catch and shoots, cutting. He cut a lot against San Antonio. We saw a couple of them and didn't end as well we wanted. He got a couple layups, had one that was swatted away. I think he just lost one. I like that. He just needs to diversify his scoring ability, because ultimately, to be the 2 guard he needs to be able to score from everywhere on the court. So for me, Fred's issue is not him having those reps. It's when he tries to do too much offensively. His role to me should be a table setter, and he shouldn't be the one that's initiating the action to go score. He should be the one that initiates it to allow the main scorers, whoever that is, to be able to go score. And if that play is stopped by the defense, then the ball can come back to Fred as a shooter or something else like that. I find that there are times in a game where he gets a bit too aggressive to hunt for his shots. Some nights it works. A lot of nights this season it hasn't worked. He just needs to have better decision making. A lot of people accuse him of being a 2 guard masquerading as a point guard because of just his height. We just assume that he's this prototypical point guard, but there are times he just plays just like Aaron Holiday or Jalen Green. So I think for us to get where we need to be, it needs to be on the backs of Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün, and then the defense. I've seen some positive things over the past few games, so I think we'll see how that progresses going forward.
Yeah, and I just believe that Jalen Green on ball is the best thing for this team long term, and also it's the best thing for this team in the playoffs, because if Jalen Green's on the ball, that means that Fred VanVleet might get a lot more open shots at the 3-point line, not trying to create his own 3-point shots where he's not that great, but just to catch and shoot. But that's just me. And in just a second, by the way, we're going to get to the Rockets player I've officially nicknamed Predator. Before we go there, just a quick reminder to our audience, join us for our live Texans Lions postgame show right here Sunday night. We need your comments and questions. And of course, share your Rockets thoughts in the YouTube comments as well. Click the like button to support us. And if you haven't done so already, click the subscribe and notifications on YouTube so you get updates on our new content. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you can listen on the go while you're out and about as well. All right, Frank, got to talk Tari Eason, a.k.a. Predator. And everybody who wondered, which one of this young core is going to make the jump this season? Not many predicted Tari, who's jumped from 46% to 56% from the field, leads the team in true shooting percentage, and is doing the same things defensively, but now finishing around the basket, which that was a weakness. And that mid-range turnaround, Frank, it's become an automatic. Are you reimagining his ceiling with all this?
He is who I thought he would be. I think that his development is gonna keep going, because at baseline, his game is like he could start on pretty much any team in the league if he needed to. If you look back to his days at LSU, the analytics and the stats on him screamed like an MVP level player. Like everything was through the roof. All the efficiency, the rebounding rates, the steal rates, his numbers in transition. I mean, he was always in the 90th percentile of everything. That was there, and that continued on when he got to the Rockets as a rookie. In the limited time he had last year, knowing what we know now, we can see why his efficiency wasn't as great. To me, the mark of a great player is if they are in small volume, really efficient, really good in impact winning. As you increase the volume, that sustains, then you got something there. I think for me, the only thing I would need to see is for him to keep getting more opportunities to be able to see what he actually is. I don't think right now like he's a number one type of player on the team or anything like that. But I think that he's one of the best 3-and-D wings in the league? That's what he's playing at that level right now. And that is such a valuable player to have, is a player that night in, night out does their job. He plays great defense, helps you in transition, is hitting his shots. And then if he can add the element to be able to have a little bit of his own self-creation to be able to get his own shot, that takes him to not necessarily a superstar, because really the guys that are stars in the league are the ones that are either volume scorers that can playmakers that can kind of run your team. I don't think he's ever going to be that, but if he's a 3-and-D wing that has some self-creation, you're talking about top of the line, right under the superstar threshold of players. These are the guys, when they hit free agency, teams are opening up the bank for them to come in. And honestly, the Rockets are going to have a very interesting summer coming up between him and Jabari, because the way he's playing right now, he's screaming that they got to pay him something. And if I'm him, if I'm his agent, hey, if I'm not just going for the Tate contract, because I'm not going for that. So I think that he is on the cusp of something. I'm not going to give him that yet. I like to see it for more consistently, but he's been a great player since he's been on this team. He always impacts winning in a positive way. He's always been a positive net rating guy. He's always been a guy that when he's on the court, good things are happening. And I think now Ime is just giving him more volume and he's healthy. So we get to see it. And it's just really paying dividends for the Rockets right now.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask me today, I just feel like Jabari's worth maybe $15 million by the current standards, 15 to 18 a year. And Tari, I'd be willing to go up to $29-30 million a year for Tari. I mean, that's the difference to me between these two guys. It's not even close.
He reminds me of kind of how Paul George started. You remember when Paul George came in the league, he was like just a 3-and-D kind of guy that over time his role in the league developed out into being a scorer and all this stuff. And there's different levels of role players or a guy that's a starter that's not a star. He has the opportunity to be one of the best in that role, almost like the Mikal Bridges mold, where you're not, unless you're Brooklyn, you're going to try to make him your star player. Mikal Bridges is not a star player. And to me, the Knicks did a great job getting him because he's going to fit in under Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns scoring and leading the team in that aspect. Let him just do what he does, shoot and play, and he can self-create. Tari has a little bit of that, but the thing is he is a bigger player, more dynamic, has a little bit just a motor thing that a lot of guys don't have. He is a really interesting player. He is really interesting. There are times where he goes off the rail a little bit, but those have been really trimmed down from when he was a rookie. And every time he's on the court, good things are happening. It's like it's the craziest thing. Whenever that guy's on the court, more than likely we're going to be either making up points or beating the other team. To me, the most important thing I like about Tari is that his defense next to Alperen Şengün, it really helps Alp with his limitations and able to cover ground, because one of the criticisms I have about Jabari, as tall as he is, his weak side help is not really great. So our front court of Şengün and Jabari sometimes can be a little funny because even though if Alp's doing great in the action, let's say the play spills over where you want the low man to come up and help, there's something that's always missing there. Not an issue with Tari Eason. He's coming for your block. He's going to swat at the ball or do something to disrupt the play. I think when you throw in Amen Thompson, it really does mitigate some of the issues you have when you don't have a defensive big in there. And to me, one of the reasons the Rockets are sustaining being a true top 10 defense, and it's not fake. They are a really good defensive team. It's because of Tari Eason and what him and Amen do for the Rockets off ball, not even in the point. We know they're devastating on point of attack. I mean, I love him. I think he's probably one of the more just unique players in the NBA right now. I hope the national people pick up what he's doing in Houston.
You like Predator, or my other idea is Captain Chaos?
I don't know what either one. He's just, I'm not glad he's a Rocket. That's what what's the Predator angle? I don't get that. It's just,
he's stalking you all the time. Like he's a predator out there. Also, Udoka's taken off the minutes restriction.
Yep.
What do you do, Frank? I mean, do you start him, or is he too valuable coming off the bench? How do you get him more minutes?
That's the $1 million question, bro. It's good. I don't know, man. As we know, there's politics involved in starting and not starting. It's not just meritocracy. If it was meritocracy, Tari Eason would have started their rookie year. If we're being honest, he would have been starting their rookie year if it was based on play. I think with Jabari, because of the equity of his pick, you take a longer look at what he is. And I think Jabari's been doing better this season. I know he gets a lot of grief, but I mean, he's doing better. From game to game, you could see the progression. And I think to me, I think that
I'm shaking my head if you're listening to audio as he's saying this.
I think that it's gonna come down to if the Rockets keep starting slow and it's costing them games as the season goes on, then the only move to be made right now is going to be for either Jabari or Dillon Brooks, and Dillon Brooks is playing out of his mind right now. As much as we hate his technical fouls and all the antics he does, Dillon Brooks is probably one of the better players on the Rockets so far this season. So we know it's not going to be him, and Ime loves him. So it's really going to come down to Jabari. And if you're not noticing, Jabari's minutes have been trending downwards every single game. With Amen there, with Tari there, to me, if it came down that they had to make a move, I would understand it, because I feel like we have too many players that aren't chaos agents on the starters. And it does, because our offense is so vanilla, as you pointed out, when it bogs down, we don't have a second gear to go to. So in the half court, a bunch of guys that like to just play in the half court. We're not efficient. We can't shoot right now. So it gets real slow and sluggish, and we go through minute-long stretches of game time of not scoring. Whereas when you have one of Amen or Tari out there, or both, they are playing defense and causing chaos, both on and off ball, turning teams over, and they run. And once you run and get those easy buckets, it kind of gets the wheels going on the offense. And I think, to me, if I'm Udoka, I'm looking at that. If my team keeps going through these stretches, to get that started earlier in the game. Let's not start off slow. Let's start off getting out on teams, and then our defense can clamp down and kind of keep them from scoring. I use this analogy, Robert, of we're a power running team. If you want to use the football analogy, we're a power running team with our starters. If a team comes in like Golden State that's very efficient, shoots a lot of threes, they're like an air raider team, or one of those offenses that just throws the ball. If they get up 2-3 touchdowns on you, it's really hard to come back with our offense, with our starters. Usually we have to rely on the bench to get us back in because they play faster. So to me, I don't want to be a team that you have to just run the ball and get a small lead and nurse it. Get out and score. Let's get our points early, get our guys that cause chaos, that make the pace go up in a game, so we can run out, get easy buckets, and then let's see what the defense can do when they have a lead. And, maybe that'll help us win more games, but it's going to be something I keep an eye on. I think it's too early right now, though, to make the change, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've been saying it since April that, Jabari needs to be out of the starting lineup. And, the 5 best players on the Rockets, 2 of them are definitely Amen and Tari. And the other thing that I believe is that if Jabari comes off the bench, I just feel like it's going to make him a better player too. I think it's an advantage for him. I think he needs more shots. And I would start Amen for a couple of reasons. Number one, that Tari manic stuff coming off the bench is just so much fun. As bad as I want Tari to play more, I do see the value in that. But also to have Tari and Jabari together, they just play better. Jabari plays better when he's playing with Tari, and they're friends. They like each other. The chemistry is real. And I just feel like those two coming together off the bench, I think it helps you in 3 different ways with all that. And I love Amen and Tari playing together, and you're still going to be playing together a lot in that situation. It's not just everybody's out and everybody's in, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that. If Giannis becomes available in the offseason, because right now Milwaukee, it looks like a disaster. Yeah. Are you interested?
Obviously, you would do your due diligence, and if he had interest in coming to Houston, you can't not entertain it. But it might, to me, in reality, the model of trying to bring a star to a team requires you to bring other stars to the team, because if you bring Giannis in, what are you bringing him into? He's struggling to get wins on a team that's laden with all-star level players and vets that have played in championship games, and some of them have been deep in the playoffs, and they're struggling to get wins. I don't see that translating necessarily to a young Houston team that he makes as a championship contender.
Why are they struggling right now? What do you think is the reason Milwaukee is struggling? What's their problem?
Well, I think the roster is not great. I think the roster is badly built. I think that
it's athleticism.
Yeah, well, no, it's I don't think that's really necessarily why. It's just there's not a fit there. Their roster, their backcourt doesn't really guard as well. I think that's
what I'm talking about. It's they're missing athleticism and defense. The athleticism on defense. They just don't have the guys.
Age as well. Yeah. So
they're getting killed. And like, if you bring Giannis, you're going to keep those guys that, that's what I was going to ask you too. If you're interested in Giannis, who would you be willing to give up?
You're going to lose one of Şengün and Jalen, and you're going to lose one of Tari and Amen.
Here's the thing. If you give them Şengün, that's the best player, the best young player that anybody probably has to offer in a package to them, with a contract that it's already set up for them. I don't think you have to give up Amen.
I don't. They're going to take 2. I promise you. Giannis is still one of the best players in the world, and I think as fans, that would be like hopeful thinking, but they're going to gut whoever gets him. They're going to gut that team. Like, it's going to be picks. It's going to be multiple players. As good as Şengün is, I don't think there's anybody on our roster that would be individually the centerpiece for a Giannis trade. We haven't built that cachet yet.
Well, there's nobody that's going to give up the guy that is going to help them win a championship and add him to Giannis. There's nobody that's going to give up that. There's no team in the NBA that's going to go, you know what? I got a young superstar. Let me give him up for an old superstar. I think Şengün is the best that they can do, along with, and the Rockets have draft picks and they have the Phoenix picks, which have value. And I'm not just saying just give up Şengün. To me, it would probably be Şengün, Whitmore, maybe even Jabari.
Robert, you can't just pick the players that you think that you don't, not that you don't like them, but the players that you might not want on the team. Like it doesn't work. Usually it's going to cost you more than you think because it's a two-way street. If you're going to be in conversations with Milwaukee, that means that you want him too. So whoever team that is going to be making those deals, they're going to really want Giannis.
I'm going to ask you this again, because you have to give me an example. How many teams have the draft picks that the Rockets have? When you give up draft picks typically in a trade, right, you're giving up your draft picks, which if you're getting Giannis, if you're getting the superstar, those picks have no value. If you're giving up picks, you're usually giving that up. The Phoenix picks, now they might have no value. Kevin Durant may never get old.
That's another thing. The picks,
but there's better value in those picks than anybody giving up their own picks in that trade. And go tell me the team that's going to give up somebody that's 23 years old and a potential all-star that's locked in for the next 5 or 6 years at a pretty good contract. And I think Şengün's got a pretty good contract.
I just don't know, bro. I don't know. I don't think Şengün can be the anchor by himself, and Şengün and young role players for a Giannis trade. I know there's not a team, but the NBA is a funny place. Somehow things get done. And if there's a team that is interested in I know I've seen like Houston is up, Miami, Brooklyn. I'm not sure. I mean, there's players out there that they could make it work. I think our pick situation obviously is not the best either. There are teams that have much better pick situations than us. To me, it's just a matter of what market wants him and where does he want to go. The other side of this is, does Giannis want to come to Houston? A lot of people are making these connections, in my opinion, just because Houston may be interested in him doesn't mean he wants to. I don't see the rationale in him saying that I'm going to leave Milwaukee because I'm not successful to go to an unproven team. If I'm Giannis, if I'm leaving, I'm going to a place where I can win a ring. And even if we did everything you said and they accepted the trade, there's nothing about this roster that tells me championship at this moment. So in order to get Giannis on a team that's actually viable, in my opinion, for him, they would need to make secondary trades to bring in other vets and other proven players and another star to be able to come to Houston. And that's going to cost you other equities and other players. So even if you just traded Şengün and picks for Giannis, you plop him on this team that's the worst three-point shooting team in the NBA, this team is not going anywhere. That's not a championship team, and I just don't see it. So the biggest thing for me with this trade is that we are not ready to facilitate it as a franchise. We don't have the setting. We don't have the milieu for us to accept a star of his caliber to make it make sense. Now, they may do what the Lakers did and make a bunch of massive trades to bring in, I've heard Kevin Durant and Giannis and this, and maybe, I don't know if that's something they could pull off. But I think that's the only way it would make sense. If it's just Giannis by himself, for him or the Rockets, it makes zero sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I put aside whether he wants to come here or not. I think he's obviously there's going to be no deal if he's not going to come here, so I'm not going to guess on that. I mean, that's just like conjecture until that comes to fruition. And, he's getting older, and I'm sure he might like some younger guys around him. I'm sure he might like a coach that has put the emphasis on defense a little bit more than maybe they have the last couple of years. But, I don't even know how badly I'm going to want him after this year. And you say the Rockets, they're not ready to do anything. Well, if you're a team that say by the end of this year has won 48, 49 games and Jalen Green continues to trend up and starts looking more and more like a superstar, there's no reason why this is not a great location. You got a future. You would have young guys. He would have great role players. And in my scenario, I know your scenario is like, get rid of all the good young role players. I would say, like, to me, I'd almost tell you right now, Amin and Tari are like off the board on any trade that I make for a superstar.
No,
because they're those two guys are maybe the two most winning type players that the Rockets have on the roster as far as like value. And also they're the perfect complements to any star that you're going to bring in. I mean, they're the perfect guys to play off of anybody.
Well, I'm definitely not saying they're untouchable in trades because they're not that good yet in the NBA. I think that until their value is proven for any of these guys in the playoffs and they are really, really put to the test in that fire, anybody's tradable from top to bottom. Anybody's tradable, but it's really just comes down to, like, in your scenario where if this team we have right now currently wins 48 games, why am I even making a trade? Because if I look at my roster and my best players are 22, 22, 23, 24, or however old they are, the way the NBA is right now, the teams that are built through the draft and have homegrown stars and players are the ones that are winning championships. And the trades that are being made to these championship teams aren't blockbuster trades for these massive big names. It's for just elite role players. And I think that the Rockets have an avenue to do that. If they win 48 games with Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun and Fred VanVleet and all these guys, what's stopping them from winning 50 the next year or 55 the next year? And at that point, if you become a perennial playoff team, all you need is that one run to really put yourself in position. And that's been the blueprint recently in the NBA. The super team of aggregating big names together just hasn't worked. It just doesn't work anymore because the circumstances you put yourself in as a team with the cap and all the stuff that comes with that, it really makes it hard to team build. So the best way to team build is by drafting players, developing them in your system, and hoping that they fall into varying roles on your team where they are maximized, but at the same time, you're not paying, 2, 3, 4 guys massive contracts to just have no bench and no depth. So I think, honestly, the Rockets we're on the forefront of the new type of NBA and the new depth in the NBA and how the NBA teams are what team building it was kind of being pushed to look like. And I wouldn't rock the boat on that unless something catastrophic happens, like we're in the lottery again or something like that.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that you're saying. The one thing that I would say is typically, unless things change, unless we see something different in the next few years, typically you need a top 5 or 10 guy. And Giannis is one of those guys. And I'm not saying you build a super, I'm not saying go out and get a super, you want to get a super team. I'm like, no, we're not going to get a super team. We're not going to give up, a ton of our depth, and that's, that's my feeling on it is like, let's see if we can go out and we're one of the few teams that has somebody to give up and still has another guy that could be a superstar, maybe a couple guys that could be superstars, but definitely elite role players. And, we have some commodities to do that. And I'm like, I don't need to go out and do it the 76ers way, the old Daryl Morey concept. I'm of the opinion of like, get the main guy and then get some really good guys around them. And it's okay if they're not old. Everybody says, well, you got to be 7 years in to win a championship. No, the superstar does. The other guys, they don't have to be that young. Sam Cassell was huge for the Rockets. Robert Horry was huge for the Rockets in those 2 championships. Those guys played clutch stuff when they had to at that time. And, you don't know what you're going to get from Ahmed and Tari in the playoffs, but man, I have a hard time believing those guys aren't going to show up when Udoka already trusts them in crunch time right now. Like, those are the 2 guys he trusts more than anybody right now outside of Fred and Dylan.
Yeah, but I also think their roles are very niche on the team. So I don't judge Jalen as I do Tari Eason. Like, Jalen has a bigger plate. I don't judge Sengun the same way. They have more responsibilities. It's one thing to just fill in a role. It's another thing to carry a team. And I think those 2 guys are being held to a standard of being the centerpieces in the NBA. Let's say that again. The NBA, you're asking 2 22-year-olds to be on a night-to-night basis, carry this team. If Sengun was just coming off the bench like he was when he was a rookie, his efficiency would be just through the roof and doing all the stuff that he was doing. But you're asking these guys to play defense, to be the offense, and so it's a little bit different. That's why I'm saying, like, I think in the playoffs, everybody has a different role to play. I'd like to see like a man in the playoffs. Does that spacing really become an issue? Because if I'm a coach, we're cheating off of Amen Thompson, and we're going to dare him to shoot all those corner threes he wants to work on and those pull-ups. You're going to have to go 10 for 10 or 15. We're going to make you shoot a bunch of jumpers. So all of these things still are yet to be seen. Just with the Giannis thing, one, is he the only superstar that's going to be available in the near future? No, I think that the Rockets, if we're winning right now, there's going to be opportunities for us to cash in down the line in other players that become available that may suit our team much better than the Giannis. Remember, we still can't shoot. And to me, that's the biggest issue. So you're going to add a non-spacing, non-shooting big to a team that's literally the worst 3-point shooting team in the league. It just doesn't make sense.
And the reason I bring up Giannis is because he's
I'm saying, with the
he's considered a top 5-10 player. I'm looking at the other top 5 or 10 players. None of them look like they're going to be available anytime soon. And, unless Jokic gets pissed off at what's going on with them. But yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then he's the guy I'm sort of pointing at because he's the most realistic shot in the next year in my mind. And like I said, I want one of those guys that's a top 5 or 10 player. And so, yeah, and Jalen and Şengün, yeah, they have more on their plate offensively, but this team right now, it doesn't feel like any guy is responsible for everything. They're responsible for a little bit more scoring, but this team is a much bigger mix. I mean, don't tell Dylan he's not number one. Don't tell Fred he's not number one. Those guys think they're carrying the thing.
That's the problem. That's a problem to me, actually. But yeah.
Well, yeah, it is a problem, but that's what I'm saying. That's where the Rockets are right now. But also, I just big picture wise, you got to if you think at least making the play-in is a possibility. I mean, the Pelicans and Clippers look to be in trouble. Yep. And you just got to be ahead of 5 teams: Portland, Utah, San Antonio, lottery teams, locks. And as long as the Rockets stay relatively healthy, and they actually can afford some injuries more than some other teams because of their depth, and they don't rely on one guy specifically as much, then you got to feel good about the big picture right now.
Yep. And I think if the 3-point shooting does kind of even out to be at least around league average, the upside for the team is very, very high because the defense is real. That's one thing. The defense is real. I've noted, the way they are guarding screens and pick and rolls right now, putting Şengün on the other team's power forward or small forward and letting one of our wings be the point of attack defenders on those pick and rolls. To me, it's working because Alp is able to move in space. So that works for them. I think also then having a second unit where you can go with Steven Adams. Steven Adams has not been great on defense so far. I'm going to give him time to get his rust off, but his body and his mass in the middle does give us a different look than if you really want to put this pressure on teams where we go 5 out of just our wing heavy lineups with Jabari at the 5, with Tari and Amen, and you get Dylan out there. That's destroying a lot of teams right now as well. So we have different looks. We have a very different lineups for our defensive actions that we want to run against teams. And I think right now that is what is carrying us. And as long as we can keep playing that gritty style until we figure out offensive efficiency, Fred gets back to himself, Şengün gets back to himself, Jalen evens out, and there's more of a hierarchy. I don't see why that, I predicted they'd win 47, 48 games. I still think that's a good prediction. I can see them falling around that. And to me, in the West, the way the competitive the West is right now, 48 games may put you right at the 5th seed, that 4th, 5th seed, just because any given night teams could lose to any team. So I feel like they're in a good position. We just have to keep playing our game and keep winning.
Yeah, just you mentioned Steven Adams. I just want to throw out there for people that aren't paying attention. Every now and then I like to check PER. It's not a perfect stat, but it's kind of an interesting stat to see, just overall efficiency of a player and all the stuff that he's bringing to the table every single night. Jock Landale is second on the team in PER right now, which is kind of crazy. I mean, Tari Eason, not surprising, number 1 in PER is Jock Landale. Jock Landale's number 2. So that's for your backup center, that's pretty good.
He has been pretty bad, though. I'm not going to lie. I think he had a good game against Spurs, but more than likely, most of the time he's been on the court, he's not been great. The PER thing, I mean, those efficiency stats, especially in low volume, are very, very flawed. But I like he looked better last night because the games before he's really drugged down a lot of the bench units. I think our centers, the backups, as they keep improving, it will be better for us because there are nights where Şengün doesn't have it and he gets winded or whatever it is. We need to not go from we have some semblance of an offense to just everybody just do whatever you want to do. And I think that's been their biggest problem. What he demands in the post and in the screening roles, it forces us to play a certain style. When he's not on the court, it's a more free-flowing, fast-paced offense. That's good for if you have Steph Curry and a bunch of vets and a bunch of guys. With our young team, like you pointed out, on any given play, anybody thinks it's their ball to go shoot. And I just don't think you can have a good team that doesn't have some offensive identity and hierarchy and people understand what the objective of each play is going to be. Like there's some plays anybody could hijack the play, and I really don't like that. So I think having a center out there that's helping you does kind of force it to get into an action where they do different things. So I think all of those guys are going to play better as the season goes along. We are not even playing the best right now that we could. And I think the Rockets are overperforming based on what we see on the court. So we'll see as they get more rhythm. I predict by middle of this month, you'll see the team that they're going to be for probably the remainder of the season, probably by closer to maybe the week of Thanksgiving, around that time of the month. The Rockets will get into a groove where you'll see the lineups are going to tighten up. We already went from 10 to 9, as Ryan and Craig pointed out. It might get down to 8 or 8.5 for the lineup. So you're going to see a shorter leash on the lineups. There's going to be more consistency on the minutes of guys are getting. You're going to see the shot diets kind of distribute out more the way they're going to look for the rest of the season. And once that happens, then I think we'll get on a roll and you'll start seeing just better brand of basketball from the team.
Anything to plug on Rockets Chop Shop? What do you got going on?
Just, check out the channel, Rockets Chop Shop on YouTube. Come by and just check out the post-game recaps and the live streams after each game. If you haven't been on the channel, we try to do a little bit of everything. So make sure you check us out.
Thanks again to our new sponsor, MyBookie. Don't forget, they're going to double your first deposit up to $1,000. Look for the link and promo code in the show description. Always great to have you, Frank. Thanks for doing it. We'll talk again soon.
Yes, sir.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.